Have you ever sat on your porch at dusk, watching the sunset paint the sky, and wondered if your heart's sacrifices were truly seen? Hello, my dear friends. I'm Eva, your 65-year-old storyteller from the quiet corners of Eufaula, Alabama, where Lake Eufaula whispers secrets and the pecan trees stand tall, their branches swaying like old friends sharing a knowing glance. At my age, I've learned life's joys and pains weave a tapestry only time can unravel. I'm here, sipping sweet tea, my rocking chair creaking softly, ready to share a tale that'll tug at your heartstrings, one I know you'll feel deep in your bones. So, pull up a chair, maybe grab a quilt, and let's talk like old friends do. If my stories warm your soul, hit that subscribe button to join our little circle. Now, let's dive into a journey of love, betrayal, and finding strength. Just like we always do. This story isn't mine, but it belongs to a woman named Clara Thornton, a soul as resilient as the Alabama pines. Clara's 59, a retired nurse from Willow Creek, California, a coastal town where the Pacific waves sing lullabies and the air smells of salt and dreams. She's the kind of woman who'd give you the shirt off her back, who spent her life stitching together a family with love and sacrifice. But sometimes, the ones we love most are the ones who break our hearts. Clara learned that lesson the hard way. On a spring morning in 2025 when she stood in her beloved beach house at Crescent Bay and realized her daughter-in-law, Izzy Navarro, had crossed a line she could never forgive. Clara's beach house wasn't just a house. It was her heart's work, a 3-bedroom cottage with weathered cedar walls, windows that caught the sunrise, and a porch where the ocean's rhythm felt like a heartbeat. She'd saved for it through decades of double shifts at Seaside General Hospital, skipping vacations, mending her own clothes, even selling her wedding ring to make ends meet. That house was her promise to her late husband, Henry, and their son, Lucas, a place where memories would live forever. She could still picture Henry, back in '85, his sandy hair tousled by the wind, laughing as he chased Lucas across the beach, their bare feet sinking into the sand. "Clara," he'd said, his eyes sparkling, "this is where we'll grow old, you, me, and our boy." But Henry was gone too soon, taken by a car accident when Lucas was just 10, leaving Clara to carry that dream alone. She did carry it, though, through years of lonely nights and weary days. Clara raised Lucas in a modest Willow Creek apartment, where the kitchen smelled of her pecan pie and the radio played Ella Fitzgerald to soothe her soul. She worked as a respiratory therapist, her hands steady as she helped patients breathe easier, her heart steady as she helped Lucas grow into a kind, talented man. When he graduated from Bayview College with an architecture degree, Clara's pride was brighter than the California sun. She thought her sacrifices had paid off, until Lucas brought home Izzy. Izzy Navarro was a Vision 32 with dark hair that fell in perfect waves, a smile that could charm a room, and eyes that calculated every move. She was a financial advisor at Crestwood Financial Group, all polish and ambition, the kind of woman who posted Instagram photos of her latte art and called it living her truth. Clara wanted to love her. She tried. When Lucas announced their engagement, Clara emptied her savings to help pay for a wedding at Harbour View's Silverwood Manor, a sprawling estate overlooking the ocean. She smiled through Izzy's demands for imported orchids and a string quartet, telling herself it was for Lucas's happiness. But even then, she felt a chill, like a shadow passing over the sun. The trouble started small, like ripples before a storm. Izzy began calling the beach house our little getaway, as if Clara's decades of sacrifice were a shared family footnote. She'd rearrange furniture without asking, store her designer bags in Clara's bedroom, and once, during a weekend visit, she moved Clara's things to the smallest room, saying, "The morning light's too harsh for you. Clara, at your age, You need rest. Clara was 57, not 87, but she bit her tongue. Peace, she thought, was worth more than pride. She'd always been that way, yielding, accommodating, the mother who put her son first. But peace came at a cost, and Clara was about to learn how high that price could be. It was a warm May morning in 2025, the kind where the Crescent Bay air felt soft as a prayer. When Clara's world shifted, she'd invited Lucas and Izzy to the beach house for a weekend, hoping to mend the growing distance between them. She spent Friday evening preparing, filling the fridge with Lucas's favorite blackberry cobbler, setting out fresh towels, even buying a bottle of the Pinot Noir Izzy liked, though Clara rarely drank because of her heart medication. They arrived late, Izzy in a silk blouse that screamed money, Lucas looking tired but smiling. They ate dinner on the porch, the sunset painting the sky in pinks and oranges, and for a moment, Clara felt hope. Maybe, she thought, we can be a family again, Saturday morning. Clara woke early, as she always did, to take her heart medication. She'd been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation 2 years earlier, a condition that made her heart flutter like a trapped bird. The pills $400 a month. Even with insurance kept her rhythm steady, her doctor's warning echoing in her mind. Miss a dose. Clara. And you're risking a stroke. She reached for her blue pill organizer on the bathroom counter. But it was gone. Her stomach sank. She searched her bedroom, the kitchen, even her purse, her hands trembling. She knew she'd left it there last night, right after her evening dose. In the dining room, Izzy sat at the table, typing on her laptop, her silk robe catching the morning light. Good morning, Izzy, Clara said, trying to keep her voice calm. Have you seen my pill organizer? It's blue, with daily compartments. Izzy barely looked up, her fingers pausing over the keyboard. Oh, Clara, I moved it when I was tidying up last night. Check the drawer by the sink. Clara opened the drawer, nothing but dish towels and pot holders. She checked the cabinets, her anxiety rising like a tide. Are you sure that's where you put it? She asked, her voice tighter now. Izzy sighed, closing her laptop with a soft click. Clara, I'm certain I put it there. Honestly, I'm not your keeper. Maybe you left it at home. You've been so forgetful lately. Her tone was smooth, practiced, but it cut like a knife. Clara's heart pounded not just from her condition, but from a dawning realization. This isn't about forgetfulness. Izzy, she said, stepping closer. These pills are for my heart. Missing a dose could put me in the hospital. Izzy stood, pouring herself coffee, her movements elegant, dismissive. Maybe you should try those herbal supplements my wellness coach recommends. All those pills. They're so limiting, don't you think? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Clara stared, stunned. Was her daughter-in-law, with no medical training, suggesting she ditch her cardiologist's orders for some trendy cure? Before she could respond, Lucas emerged from the guest room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. What's going on? He asked, his voice groggy. My medication's missing, Clara said, turning to him. I left it on the counter last night, and now it's gone. Lucas frowned, joining the search, checking under furniture, in closets, even the porch. Maybe it fell somewhere, he said, his tone hopeful. Or could it have gotten tossed out by accident? The trash. The word sparked a memory. Izzy clearing the bathroom counter last night, her arm sweeping items into a pile with a careless flick. Clara hurried to the outdoor garbage bin, Lucas trailing behind, confused. She lifted the lid, and there, beneath a crumpled paper towel, was her blue pill organizer, empty. 7 days of life-saving medication, gone. She held it up, her hands shaking. It's here, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But the pills, they're gone. Lucas's brow furrowed. That doesn't make sense. Why would anyone throw them out? Why indeed, Clara turned toward the house, where Izzy stood at the kitchen window, watching them. Their eyes met, and Izzy didn't flinch, didn't look away, just held Clara's gaze with a cool, unreadable expression before turning back to her coffee. In that moment, Clara knew. Izzy hadn't misplaced the pills. She'd thrown them away, deliberately, callously, as if Clara's health were a pawn in some game. The realization hit like a wave, crashing over her, leaving her breathless. Her daughter-in-law, the woman her son loved, had endangered her life, and for what? The house money control. "I need to get to a pharmacy," Clara said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I can't miss today's dose." "Of course," Lucas said, grabbing his keys. "I'll drive you." As Lucas changed, Clara approached Izzy, who was back at her laptop, typing as if nothing had happened. "I found the pill organizer," Clara said quietly. "In the trash, empty." Izzy looked up, her face a mask of mild surprise. "Really, that's odd. Maybe you emptied it by mistake." Her voice was syrupy, but her eyes were cold. "No, Izzy," Clara said, her voice firm now. "I didn't empty my heart medication into the trash and forget about it." Izzy sighed, leaning back. "Clara, I get that you're upset, but I don't appreciate the accusation. If you're having memory issues, maybe you should talk to your doctor, not blame family." The word stung, sharp and calculated, but Clara didn't waver. She saw Izzy clearly now, not just a daughter-in-law, but a woman who'd cross any line to get what she wanted. And what she wanted, Clara realized, was the beach house, her heart, her legacy. The drive to the Crescent Bay Pharmacy was quiet, the coastal highway stretching out like a ribbon under the morning sun. Lucas tried to rationalize. "Maybe the pills fell out somehow," he said, his knuckles tight on the steering wheel. "Or maybe you took them and forgot." Clara looked at him, her son, the boy she'd raised with every ounce of her love. "Lucas," she said softly, "you know Izzy wouldn't do this on purpose, right? But she did know, and deep down, she suspected Lucas did too." The pharmacist, reluctant at first, provided a 3-day emergency supply for $175 money Clara could ill afford since her hospital layoff 6 months earlier. As they drove back, Clara made a decision. No more silence, no more yielding. She'd spent decades putting others first, but now she'd protect what was hers, her health, her home, her dignity. Back at the beach house, Izzy was packing, claiming a work emergency in Willow Creek. Clara watched her fold a silk blouse with precision, her face unreadable. "You found your pills," I assume Izzy said, not looking up. "The container," Clara said. "Empty. Funny how it ended up in the trash." Izzy zipped her bag, her smile thin. "Well, thank goodness the pharmacy helped. Those pills are pricey, aren't they?" "Nearly $400 a month," Lucas mentioned. The mention of the cost, so casual, confirmed Clara's fears. This wasn't about carelessness. It was about money, power, and a house Izzy saw as a ticket to her ambitions. Clara took a breath, steadying herself. "Izzy," she said, "this house is mine, not ours. And from now on, things are going to change." Izzy's eyes flickered, a hint of alarm beneath her composure, but she said nothing. Lucas, standing in the doorway, looked torn, his face a mix of confusion and pain. Clara's heart ached for him, but she knew this was the moment she'd stop being the mother who gave everything and start being the woman who stood her ground. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Crescent Bay, Clara stood on her porch, the waves whispering strength. She thought of Henry, his voice echoing, "You're stronger than you think." She was, and she'd prove it. If this story's touched your heart, if you've ever felt your sacrifices overlooked, Please hit that subscribe button to join our little circle of storytellers. And drop a comment below. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed your trust? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them with me, won't you? The Crescent Bay cottage stood quiet under the morning sun, its cedar walls warmed by decades of salt air, its windows catching the ocean's shimmer like a promise kept. Clara Thornton, at 59, had built this haven with every ounce of her heart. But that spring morning in 2025, as she held the empty pill organizer, she felt the weight of a different truth. Her daughter-in-law, Izzy Navarro, had thrown her heart medication into the trash, a deliberate act that cut deeper than any wound. To understand why that betrayal stung so fiercely, why Clara's resolve rose like a tide, you had to walk the road she'd traveled, back to the years when her life was woven with sacrifice and her love for her son. Lucas was the thread that held it all together. In 1986, Clara was 34, a young widow in Willow Creek, California, with a 10-year-old son and a heart still raw from loss. Her apartment on Maple Street was modest, its walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's radio, but it smelled of jasmine from the vines climbing the balcony, and the cinnamon rolls she baked every Sunday. Trying to keep life sweet for Lucas, she worked as a respiratory therapist at Seaside General Hospital, her hands steady as she helped patients breathe, her spirit fierce as she carried her son through a world that felt hollow without his father. Henry's death, a car accident on the fog-draped Pacific Coast Highway, had shattered Clara's dreams. She could still see him, his sandy hair glowing in the sunlight, his laugh warm as a summer breeze off Crescent Bay. They'd planned to buy a beach house someday, a place where Lucas could chase crabs in the sand, where they'd grow old, sipping lemonade on a creaky porch. "Clara," Henry would say, his hand squeezing hers, "you'll paint those seascapes you love, and we'll watch the sunset every night." But that dream died with him, leaving Clara to build a new life from fragments of courage and love. Raising Lucas alone was a quiet battle. Willow Creek was a gentle town, its Saturday farmers market bursting with peaches and homemade jams, its 4th of July parade alive with kids waving sparklers under a twilight sky. But money was tight. Clara worked double shifts, her sneakers squeaking on hospital linoleum. Her breaks spent knitting scarves for Lucas or reading medical journals by a flickering lamp. She gave up her art classes those evenings, sketching charcoal waves at the community center, because the $50 fee was better spent on Lucas's school books. She'd always loved painting, the way a brush could capture the ocean's shimmer, but she told herself there'd be time later, after Lucas was grown. One memory lingered, sharp as a photograph. In 1990, when Lucas was 13, Clara sold her wedding ring, a simple gold band with a tiny sapphire, to pay for his summer architecture camp. She stood in the pawn shop, her throat tight, as the clerk counted out the cash. "It's just a ring," she whispered. Though her heart felt like it was breaking, she never told Lucas, didn't want him to carry that weight. Instead, she watched him come home from camp, his eyes bright with sketches of bridges and houses, and knew it was worth it. "Mom," he said, spreading his drawings on the kitchen table, "I'm going to build something amazing someday." Clara ruffled his hair, her smile hiding the ache. "I know you will, sweetheart," she said, and she believed it. Those years were stitched with small joys and silent pain. Clara would take Lucas to Crescent Bay on weekends, a short drive from Willow Creek, where they'd sit on a faded blanket, eating peanut butter sandwiches and watching seagulls swoop over the waves. Lucas, with his father's hazel eyes, would sketch driftwood and seashells, dreaming of building houses someday. "Mom," he'd say, his pencil flying, "I'm going to design a house right here, with a big porch for you." Clara would smile, her heart swelling, believing her love would carry them both. By 2005, Lucas was 29. a graduate of Bayview College with a degree in architecture. Clara sat in the audience at his commencement, her hands clasped tight, tears blurring the sight of him in his cap and gown. She'd moved heaven and earth to get him their extra shifts, clipped coupons, a second job cleaning offices one summer. When Lucas landed a job at a Willow Creek firm, designing coastal homes, Clara felt like she'd won the lottery. She started saving again, penny by penny, for that beach house Henry had dreamed of. It wasn't just for her, it was for Lucas, for the family they'd build together. In 2015, Clara's dream came true. She bought a weathered cottage at Crescent Bay, its cedar walls kissed by salt air, its windows framing the Pacific like a painting. It needed work peeling paint, creaky floors, but it was hers. She spent weekends sanding banisters, planting lavender in the garden, humming Ella Fitzgerald as the radio played. "Clara, you're crazy," her friend Judy Harper said, laughing over iced tea on the porch. This place is a money pit, but Clara just smiled, running her hand along the porch railing. "It's my heart's home, Judy, worth every blister." Lucas loved the house too. He'd visit on Sundays, bringing takeout from Willow Creek's best diner, and they'd sit on the beach, talking about his projects or Henry's old fishing stories. Clara felt whole again, like the pieces of her life were finally fitting together. Then, in 2018, Lucas met Izzy Navarro. Izzy was a force, 31, polished, with dark hair that fell in perfect waves and a wardrobe straight out of a magazine. She worked as a financial advisor at Crestwood Financial Group, all charm and ambition, the kind of woman who posted Instagram photos of her latte art and called it living her truth. Lucas was smitten, his eyes bright in a way Clara hadn't seen since he was a boy with a new sketch pad. "Mom," he said over dinner, his voice bubbling, "Izzy's got this vision. She sees the world bigger than I ever could." Clara nodded, wanting to believe in his happiness. She invited Izzy to the beach house, hoping to build a bridge. Izzy arrived in a sleek SUV, her heels clicking on the porch, and surveyed the cottage like an appraiser. "It's quaint," she said, her smile tight. "With some upgrades, it could be stunning." Clara felt a pang, but brushed it off. She wanted to love Izzy. For Lucas, the wedding was a whirlwind. Izzy insisted on Silverwood Manor, a harbour view estate with chandeliers and ocean views. Her parents chipped in a token amount, leaving Clara to cover the rest, $20,000 from her retirement savings. She didn't hesitate, though it meant delaying her own plans to retire. "It's for Lucas," she told herself, signing the check. The reception was lavish, with lobster and a jazz band, and Clara danced with Lucas under fairy lights, her heart full despite the cost. Izzy, radiant in silk, thanked her with a quick hug, but her eyes were already on the guests, networking even on her wedding day. After the honeymoon, the cracks began to show. Izzy started treating the beach house like her own, suggesting improvements. Clara couldn't afford marble countertops, a second-story deck. She'd leave her yoga mats and designer sunglasses scattered around, claiming the master bedroom for herself and Lucas. "You don't mind, do you?" Clara, she'd say, her voice sweet but firm. "It's just more practical for us." Clara, ever the peacemaker, moved to the smaller room, telling herself it didn't matter. But it did. Each concession felt like a pebble in her shoe, small but stinging. Willow Creek's rhythms grounded Clara through those early tensions. She'd walk to the farmer's market on Saturdays, buying peaches and chatting with neighbors about the weather or the new coffee shop on Main Street. She joined a book club at the library, where women her age sipped chamomile tea and debated Jane Austen. These were her anchors, reminders of who she was beyond the mother, the widow, the woman trying to hold her family together. But at home, Izzy's presence loomed larger. She'd talk about the beach house as our asset, dropping hints about vacation rentals or corporate events. Properties like this are gold in Crescent Bay. She'd say, scrolling through her phone, "You're sitting on a fortune." Clara tried to share her heart. "This house isn't about money. Izzy," she said one evening, the ocean breeze carrying her words. "It's about memories. Henry, Lucas, me." Izzy just smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Memories don't pay the bills," she said. And Clara felt a chill, like a cloud passing over the moon. Lucas, caught in the middle, didn't see the storm brewing. He'd always been gentle, a dreamer like his father, but Izzy's ambition dazzled him. When Clara voiced her unease, he'd say, "Mom, Izzy's just practical. She wants what's best for us." Clara wanted to believe him, but her heart whispered otherwise. She felt alone, like a lighthouse standing firm but unseen in the fog. She'd lie awake at night, the cottage's creaks mingling with her thoughts, wondering if her sacrifices had been for nothing. One memory haunted her a moment from 1990 when Lucas was 19. He'd come home from college, upset after failing a design class. Clara sat him down with hot cocoa, the kitchen warm with the scent of vanilla. "You're enough, Lucas," she said, her hand on his. "You don't have to be perfect. Just keep going." He'd hugged her, his voice soft. "Thanks, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you." That boy was still in there, Clara knew, but Izzy's influence was pulling him away. By 2024, Clara's health began to falter. Her atrial fibrillation diagnosis came after months of dizziness and irregular heartbeats. The medication was a lifeline, but it strained her budget, especially after Seaside General laid her off in a corporate merger. She took a part-time job at Ocean View Clinic, checking vitals and updating charts, but the pay was half what she'd earned. Still, she kept the beach house stocked for Lucas and Izzy's visits blackberry cobbler. Fresh linens, the Pinot Noir, Izzy liked. Each gesture was a plea for connection, a hope that love could bridge the growing gap. But love, Clara was learning, wasn't enough without respect. As she stood in her cottage that May morning, the empty pill organizer in her hand, she felt the weight of every sacrifice, every missed art class, every sleepless night, every dollar saved. She'd given her heart to her family, and Izzy had tossed it away like trash. But Clara wasn't done. She thought of Henry, his voice clear as the ocean. "You're stronger than you think." She was, and she'd show it. If this story's touched your heart, if you've ever felt your sacrifices overlooked, please hit that subscribe button to join our circle of storytellers. And drop a comment below. What sacrifices have you made for the ones you love? I'd be honored to hear your stories. Share them with me, won't you? The Crescent Bay cottage stood bathed in the soft glow of dawn, its weathered cedar walls whispering memories, its porch cradling the rhythmic lullaby of the Pacific waves. Clara Thornton, at 59, had poured her heart into this place, every sanded banister, every lavender sprig in the garden, a testament to her love and sacrifice. But that spring of 2025, as the ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine, Clara felt a storm brewing, not in the sky, but in her family. Her daughter-in-law, Izzy Navarro, had thrown her heart medication into the trash, a deliberate act that cracked the fragile peace Clara had clung to. Now, as the days unfolded, Izzy's ambitions grew bolder, her words sharper, and Clara's eyes opened to a truth she'd tried to ignore. The woman her son loved wasn't just practical, she was dangerous, and Clara, for the first time, felt the stirrings of a fight she couldn't walk away from. The weeks following the medication incident were a slow unraveling. Clara tried to hold on to normalcy, to the rhythms that had always grounded her. She'd walk to Willow Creek's farmers market on Saturdays, her canvas tote filling with peaches and fresh-baked sourdough, her conversations with neighbors a balm for her restless heart. She'd linger at the coffee shop on Main Street, sipping a latte and watching kids chase pigeons in the town square. These were the threads of her life, woven through decades of raising Lucas alone, of building a home from the ashes of loss. But Izzy's presence was like a snag in that fabric, pulling at the seams, threatening to tear it apart. Izzy's visits to the beach house became more frequent, each one a subtle power play. She'd arrive with Lucas in tow, her sleek SUV crunching on the gravel drive, her designer sunglasses perched like a crown. She'd sweep through the cottage, leaving traces of her claim, a yoga mat in the living room, a stack of financial magazines on the kitchen counter, her perfume lingering in the air. Clara noticed how Izzy referred to the house as our little retreat, as if Clara's 30 years of sacrifice were a shared footnote. "This place has so much potential," Izzy would say, her eyes scanning the walls like a realtor, a few upgrades, and it could be a gold mine. Clara would force a smile, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. But inside, she felt a growing unease, like a tide pulling her under. The suggestions turned to demands. One weekend in June, Izzy arrived with a tablet full of renovation plans, glossy images of glass-walled decks and gourmet kitchens. "Clara," she said, her voice bright but edged, "I've been talking to a contractor. We could add a second story, maybe a hot tub. It'd double the property value." She slid the tablet across the dining table, her manicured nails tapping expectantly. Clara glanced at the plans, her heart sinking at the estimated cost, $200,000. "Izzy," she said carefully, "this house is fine as it is. I can't afford that kind of project, not now." Izzy's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. "Oh, Clara, you could take out a home equity loan. Lucas and I would chip in, say, $30,000. It's an investment for all of us." The word all hung in the air, heavy with implication. Clara looked at Lucas, sitting quietly at the table, his gaze fixed on his coffee. "Lucas," she said, "what do you think?" He shifted, uncomfortable. "It sounds smart." "Mom, Izzy knows this stuff. Property values in Crescent Bay are skyrocketing." Clara's chest tightened. Her son, the boy she'd raised with every ounce of her love, was siding with a plan that would mortgage her dream. "I need to think about it," she said, folding the tablet closed. Izzy's lips pursed, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face, but she nodded. "Of course, Clara, it's a big decision. Just don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't last." That night, Clara lay awake, the cottage's creaks blending with the ocean's murmur. She felt alone, like a lighthouse in a fog, shining but unseen. She thought of Henry, his voice soft in her memory. "You're stronger than you think." But strength felt far away, buried under years of yielding, of putting Lucas first. She'd always been the peacemaker, the mother who smoothed edges, who swallowed her pride to keep her family whole. But Izzy's words, her plans, they weren't about family. They were about control, and Clara was starting to see it. The next blow came subtly, wrapped in Izzy's honeyed charm. At a family dinner in Willow Creek, hosted at Lucas and Izzy's sleek condo, Izzy invited a few of her colleagues from Crestwood Financial Group. Clara arrived with a homemade pecan pie, her hands nervous as she set it on the counter. The guests, polished in tailored suits, chatted about stock portfolios and vacation homes. Izzy, radiant in a silk dress, guided the conversation, then turned to Clara with a smile. "Clara's beach house is a gem," she said, her voice loud enough for all to hear. "A little dated, but with the right vision. It could be a showstopper. We're working on some upgrades." The guest nodded, impressed, and Clara felt her face flush. She hadn't agreed to any upgrades, hadn't even discussed them since that June weekend. But Izzy spoke as if the house were hers, as if Clara were a guest in her own story. Later, as Clara helped clear dishes, she pulled Izzy aside. "Izzy," she said, her voice low, "why did you say we're upgrading the house? I haven't made any decisions." Izzy laughed, a tinkling sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Clara, I was just hyping it up for my colleagues. You know, networking. You don't mind, do you?" Clara's jaw tightened, but she nodded, swallowing the words she wanted to say. Peace, she told herself, was worth more than confrontation. But peace was slipping away. Izzy's next move was bolder and more personal. In July, Clara invited Lucas and Izzy to the beach house for a weekend barbecue, hoping to recapture the warmth of their early days. She spent the day preparing, grilling corn on the cob, mixing lemonade, setting out a checkered tablecloth on the porch. Lucas arrived alone at first, his smile tired but genuine. "Izzy's running late," he said, helping Clara carry plates. They talked about his latest project, a community center in Willow Creek, and for a moment, Clara felt like she had her son back, the boy who'd sketched houses on the beach. Izzy arrived an hour later, her SUV packed with guests, 3 colleagues from her firm, uninvited. "I hope you don't mind." "Clara," she said, her smile dazzling. "I mentioned the barbecue, and they were dying to see the house." Clara froze, her heart sinking. She'd planned an intimate family day. Not a showcase for Izzy's network, but she nodded, forcing a smile, and set out extra plates. The guests roamed the cottage, snapping photos of the ocean view, while Izzy played tour guide. This place could host corporate retreats, she said, her voice carrying. With a little polish, "It's perfect, Clara." Flipping burgers at the grill, felt like a stranger in her own home, her sanctuary reduced to a sales pitch. That evening, as the guests left, Clara found her bedroom rearranged, her quilt folded away, Izzy's makeup bag on the dresser. We needed the space for everyone. Izzy said, when Clara asked, "You were fine in the blue room?" "Right." Clara's throat tightened, but she said nothing. Her silence a habit she couldn't break. Lucas, sensing the tension, tried to lighten the mood. "The barbecue was great." "Mom," he said, his hand on her shoulder. But Clara saw the conflict in his eyes, the way he avoided looking at Izzy. The final straw came in August, a quiet betrayal that cut deeper than the rest. Clara's atrial fibrillation had worsened, her heart fluttering unpredictably, her doctor adjusting her medication to a stricter schedule. She kept her pill organizer on the kitchen counter, a small blue case that held her lifeline. One morning, after Lucas and Izzy's weekend visit, Clara opened it to find 2 days' worth of pills missing. She searched the cottage, her hands shaking, her mind racing. She called Lucas, her voice steady but urgent. "Did you see my pills when you left?" she asked. "No." "Mom," he said, his tone worried. "Maybe you misplaced them." Clara hung up, her gaze falling on a crumpled note in the trash, Izzy's handwriting scrawled across it. "Check pharmacy for refill options." The note was innocent enough, but paired with the missing pills, it felt like a message. Clara's heart pounded, not just from her condition, but from a truth she could no longer ignore. Izzy wasn't careless. She was calculated, and her actions were a warning: comply. Or I'll make things harder. Clara sat on the porch, the ocean's rhythm steadying her breath. She felt betrayed, like a bonghong wilting in a forgotten garden. She'd given everything for Lucas, her art, her savings, her dreams, and now his wife was dismantling her world, piece by piece. She thought of a moment from 1998, when Lucas was 22, home from college for Thanksgiving. They'd sat in the Willow Creek apartment, the kitchen warm with the scent of roasted turkey. "Mom," he'd said, his voice soft. "You're my rock. I'm going to make you proud." Clara had hugged him, her heart full. That boy was still there. But Izzy's shadow was pulling him away. Clara's book club became her refuge, a circle of women at the Willow Creek Library, their voices soft over chamomile tea. One evening, she shared a sliver of her story, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to talk to Lucas," she said, without losing him. Her friend Judy Harper, a retired real estate lawyer, squeezed her hand. "Clara," she said, "you can't keep giving until there's nothing left. Love doesn't mean silence." Judy's words lingered, like a lantern in the dark. But Clara wasn't ready to act. Not yet. Izzy's manipulations grew bolder. She started posting about the beach house on Instagram. Photos of the porch with captions like, "Our coastal escape," "Ready for a glow-up." Clara saw the posts, her stomach twisting, but Lucas brushed it off. "She's just excited." "Mom," he said, his voice defensive. "She loves the house." Clara wanted to scream. It's not her house, but she held back, her silence a cage she'd built herself. One night, Clara found a voicemail from Izzy, her voice syrupy. "Clara, I've got a colleague who handles vacation rentals. We could make thousands a week. Just think about it." Clara deleted the message, her hand shaking. She felt trapped, like a bird in a net. Her home, her sanctuary, slipping from her grasp. She walked to the beach, the sand cool under her feet, and stood where she'd once stood with Henry and Lucas, their laughter echoing in her memory. "You're stronger than you think," Henry's voice whispered, and Clara felt a spark, a resolve taking root. She wasn't ready to confront Izzy, not fully, but she started keeping records, saving Izzy's texts, noting every uninvited guest, every rearranged room. She called Judy, her voice quiet but firm. "I need advice," she said, "about protecting my house." Judy's response was immediate. "Clara, it's time to draw a line. You're not just saving a house, you're saving yourself." Clara hung up, her heart racing, knowing the fight was coming, and she couldn't avoid it much longer. If this story stirred your heart, if you've ever felt your love tested by those closest to you, please hit that subscribe button to stay with us, and drop a comment below. Have you ever had to draw a line to protect what matters most? I'd be honored to hear your stories. Share them with me, won't you? The Crescent Bay cottage stood bathed in the golden light of an October sunset, its cedar walls glowing softly, its porch cradling the steady murmur of the Pacific waves. Clara Thornton, at 59, had fought for this haven, her heart's home, with every ounce of courage she'd rediscovered in the summer of 2020. She'd drawn a line against her daughter-in-law, Izzy Navarro, whose manipulations throwing away Clara's heart medication, plotting to claim the cottage, weaving lies like a spider's web, had pushed Clara to her breaking point. Now, as the lavender in her garden swayed, and the ocean breeze carried whispers of change, Clara felt a quiet strength, not of victory, but of truth. Izzy's actions were unraveling. Lucas was beginning to see, and Clara, who'd once feared losing her son, was learning that love could mean letting go, while holding firm to who she was. The fallout began with a single article, a spark that lit up Willow Creek's quiet corners. Clara, after weeks of documenting Izzy's oversteps, camera footage, saved emails, Instagram posts, had agreed to an interview with Lila Thompson, a young reporter from the Willow Creek Times. Lila, with her sharp questions and kind eyes, had a personal stake in the story. Her own grandmother had once been pressured to sell her home by a scheming relative. "Clara," Lila said, her voice warm over coffee at the Main Street Cafe, "your story could help others, women like you, who've given everything and been taken for granted." Clara hesitated. her heart torn. Going public meant exposing family wounds, risking Lucas's trust. But Judy Harper, her friend and confidant, urged her forward. "Clara," Judy said, her hand firm on Clara's, "truth isn't betrayal, it's freedom." The interview took place in Clara's cottage, the dining table covered with a checkered cloth, a plate of pecan cookies between them. Clara spoke softly, her voice steady but heavy, recounting Izzy's actions, the uninvited guests, the appraiser, the medication tossed like trash. She showed Lila the evidence, camera stills of Izzy with the appraiser, screenshots of posts claiming the house as our gem, a doctor's note explaining the dangers of missing her heart medication. "I didn't want to fight," Clara said, her eyes on the ocean beyond the window, "but this house, it's my life's work. And my health, it's not a game." Lila's pen moved quickly, her face a mix of empathy and resolve. "Clara," she said, "this isn't just about a house. It's about respect, and you're standing up for it." The article appeared in the Willow Creek Times on a crisp October morning. Its headline simple but piercing, "A Mother's Stand, Protecting Her Home from Family Pressure." It laid out Clara's story with clarity, balancing her evidence with Izzy's denials. Delivered through a terse statement from her attorney, Miss Navarro acted in good faith to support family interests. But the evidence spoke louder. The camera footage, the emails, the doctor's warning about Clara's atrial fibrillation. A local elder law expert, quoted anonymously, called the pattern concerning, suggestive of financial coercion. The article spread quickly, shared on Willow Creek's community Facebook page, whispered over coffee at the farmer's market, debated in the library's book club. Clara's phone buzzed with messages, friends offering support, neighbors sharing their own stories of family disputes, strangers thanking her for her courage. "You're an inspiration," wrote Ellen from the community center support group, her words warming Clara's heart. But not all reactions were kind. A few mutual acquaintances, swayed by Izzy's charm, questioned Clara's motives. "Why air dirty laundry?" one wrote. Her words sharp. Clara felt a pang, but she held firm. She wasn't seeking vengeance. She was seeking truth, and truth, she was learning, could be both painful and freeing. Izzy's world began to crack. The Willow Creek Times article caught the attention of Crestwood Financial Group, where Izzy's colleagues had seen her flaunt the cottage as a family asset. An internal review was launched, probing her professional conduct, especially after Clara's lawyer, Margaret Wells, sent a letter to the firm, citing Izzy's unauthorized appraisal as potential fraud. Izzy's polished facade faltered. Her Instagram went silent, her confident smile replaced by tight-lipped strain. Clara heard whispers from Judy, who knew someone at Crestwood Izzy's on thin ice. Her boss isn't happy about the bad press. The real turning point, though, was Lucas. Clara had sent him the article, her heart pounding as she hit send. She included a note, simple but raw, "Lucas, I love you, please read this and see what I see." 2 days later, Lucas called, his voice heavy like a man carrying a weight too big for his shoulders. "Mom," he said, pausing, "I read it, and I checked Izzy's emails. She's been talking to a rental company about the house without telling me or you." Clara's breath caught, a mix of relief and sorrow flooding her. "Lucas," she said, her voice soft, "I'm so sorry you had to find out this way." "I don't know what to think," Lucas said, his words breaking. "Izzy says it was just an idea, to help us financially. But the pills, Mom, I keep thinking about that. Why would she—" He trailed off, unable to finish. Clara closed her eyes, picturing her son as a boy, sketching houses on the beach, his laughter bright as the sun. "Lucas," she said, "you don't have to have all the answers now. Just start asking the questions, Lucas was silent, then whispered, "I'm trying, Mom." The call ended, but Clara felt a spark, a hope that her son was waking up. The next step came unexpectedly. A confrontation Clara hadn't planned. In late October, Lucas asked to meet at the cottage, alone. "Izzy's at a work thing," he said, his voice hesitant. "I just need to talk." Clara agreed, her heart racing, and spent the morning preparing. Baking a blackberry cobbler, setting out iced tea. The cottage warm with the scent of sugar and fruit. Lucas arrived at dusk, his flannel shirt rumpled, his eyes tired but searching. They sat on the porch, the sunset painting the sky in pinks and oranges, the ocean's rhythm a steady companion. "Mom," Lucas began, his hands clasped tight. "I found more emails. Izzy's been talking to her colleague about using the house for corporate events. She never told me. And there's a draft contract for vacation rentals. Your name's on it, but it's not your signature." Clara's heart sank, the betrayal deeper than she'd imagined. She reached for the evidence folder, now thick with papers, and showed Lucas the camera footage, the cease and desist letter, the Instagram posts. "Lucas," she said, her voice steady, "this isn't about helping, it's about control. And I can't let it continue. Not for me, not for you." Lucas stared at the papers, his face pale. "I thought she loved the house like I do," he said, his voice cracking. "But it's like she sees it as a paycheck. And you..." He looked at Clara, his eyes wet. "She threw away your pills, didn't she, knowing what they mean to you?" Clara nodded, her throat tight. "Yes," she said, "and that's when I knew. I had to protect myself, and this home." Lucas stood, pacing the porch, his hands raking through his hair. "I've been so blind," he said, his voice raw. "I kept telling myself she was just ambitious, but it's wrong. I'm so sorry, Mom, for not seeing it sooner." Clara rose, her heart aching, and pulled him into a hug like she had when he was a boy, his head resting on her shoulder. "You don't need to be sorry," she said, her voice soft. "You just need to be honest, with yourself and with her." That night, Lucas stayed at the cottage, sleeping in the guest room, the first time in years they'd shared a quiet evening together. They talked by the kitchen table. The cobbler half-eaten, the radio playing Ella Fitzgerald low. Clara shared stories of Henry, his love for fishing, his dreams for their family. "Your dad always said to live true," she said, her eyes on Lucas. "That's all I want for you." Lucas nodded, his face thoughtful. "I'm starting to see, Mom," he said. "But what do I do now?" Clara didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing: Lucas was asking the right questions. The next morning, he left with a promise to confront Izzy, to dig deeper into her plans. Clara watched his car disappear down the gravel drive, her heart heavy but hopeful. She thought of a moment from 1990, when Lucas, at 19, had come home upset after failing a college class. She'd made hot cocoa, the kitchen warm with vanilla, and told him, "You're enough, Lucas, just keep going." That boy was still there, and he was finding his way back. Izzy's response came swiftly, a calculated counterattack. Days after Lucas's visit, she posted a cryptic Instagram story, a photo of herself looking pensive, captioned, "When family misunderstands your intentions, stay true to your heart." The post gained traction, friends and colleagues commenting with support, painting Clara as the villain. Clara saw it, her stomach twisting, but she didn't flinch. She forwarded the post to Margaret, who added it to the file for a restraining order. "This is gaslighting," Margaret said, her voice firm. "She's trying to control the narrative, but the evidence is on your side." Clara's support group at the Willow Creek Community Center became her lifeline. a circle of women who understood the pain of family betrayal. One evening, Ellen shared her own story of a son who'd pressured her to sell her farm. I stood my ground. Ellen said, her voice strong, and he came back because I showed him what matters. Clara nodded, her resolve deepening. She wasn't just fighting for a house, she was fighting for herself, for the woman who'd given everything and deserved to be seen. The legal steps moved forward, Margaret preparing a restraining order based on Izzy's repeated violations, testing the locks, the unauthorized appraisal, the missing pills. Clara met with her at the cottage, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of lavender, and signed the paperwork, her hand steady. "This feels so final," Clara said, her voice soft. Margaret smiled, her eyes kind. "It's not final. Clara, it's a beginning. You're protecting your peace." Clara's peace was tested when Lucas called again, his voice strained. "I confronted Izzy," he said. "She admitted to the rental talks, said it was for our future, but she won't talk about the pills. She just shuts down." Clara's heart ached, but she felt a quiet pride. "You're doing the hard thing, Lucas," she said, "and that's enough for now." Lucas paused, then said, "I'm staying at a friend's place for a bit. I need to think." Clara closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I'm here," she said, "always." The cottage became Clara's sanctuary, its walls a shield, its waves a song of resilience. She spent evenings on the porch, watching the sunset, feeling Henry's presence in the breeze. She thought of a Christmas in 2000, when Lucas, at 24, had strung lights on their tiny tree, saying, "Mom, you're the best thing in my life." That love was still there, and Clara knew, no matter what came next, she'd hold on to it, with boundaries, with truth, with hope. The Crescent Bay cottage stood serene under a November sky, its cedar walls softened by the golden light of dawn, its porch cradling the gentle rhythm of the Pacific waves. Clara Thornton, at 59, had fought for this haven, her heart's home, through the storms of betrayal and doubt in the summer of 2025. Her daughter-in-law, Izzy Navarro, had pushed her to the edge, throwing away her heart medication, scheming to claim the cottage, weaving lies that cut like thorns. But Clara had stood firm, not with anger, but with the quiet strength of a woman who'd rediscovered her worth. Now, as the lavender in her garden bloomed and the ocean breeze carried whispers of renewal, Clara felt a peace she hadn't known in years, a peace born of truth, of boundaries, of love that held space for healing. The battle was over, but the lessons of a lifetime were just beginning to unfold. The fallout from the Willow Creek Times article lingered like the last notes of a song. Clara's story, her stand against Izzy's manipulations, had rippled through the town, sparking conversations at the farmers' market, in the library's book club, over coffee at the Main Street Cafe. Women stopped Clara at the grocery store, their eyes kind, sharing their own tales of family struggles. "You gave me courage," one said, her voice soft, "to say no to my sister's demands." Clara nodded, her heart full, realizing her fight wasn't just for herself, but for every woman who'd given too much and been seen too little. The support warmed her, like sunlight after a long winter, but it was the quiet moments at the cottage that truly anchored her soul. Clara's days took on a new rhythm, one of rediscovery. She enrolled in a painting class at the Willow Creek Community Center, a dream she'd shelved decades ago to raise Lucas. Her hands, once steady with hospital monitors, now trembled with a brush, capturing the ocean's shimmer in strokes of blue and gold. "You've got a gift, Clara," her teacher said, smiling as Clara's seascape took shape. Clara blushed, but felt a spark, a piece of herself coming back to life. She hung her first painting above the cottage's fireplace, its waves a reminder that beauty could emerge from years of sacrifice. The cottage itself became a place of connection, not just for Clara, but for her community. She opened its doors for small gatherings, book club meetings, afternoon teas, the porch alive with laughter and the scent of pecan pies. Ellen, from the support group, brought her knitting, her needles clicking as they discussed novels and life. Judy Harper. Clara's rocked through the storm, shared stories of her own, her voice warm over glasses of iced tea. "Clara," Judy said one evening, the sunset painting the sky in pinks and purples, "you've turned this house into a home, not just for you, but for all of us." Clara smiled, her heart swelling, knowing the cottage was more than cedar and glass. It was a legacy, hers to share, hers to protect. Lucas's journey was slower, but it was real. After confronting Izzy about her emails and rental plans, he'd moved into a small apartment in Willow Creek, a rented studio with a view of the town square. He'd left his architecture firm, choosing freelance work that let him sketch again. Houses, bridges, dreams he'd buried under Izzy's ambitions. He visited Clara often, bringing coffee from the Main Street cafe, his smile tentative but growing. They'd sit on the porch, the ocean breeze carrying their words, and talk, not just about the past, but about the future. One November evening, as the stars began to speckle the sky, Lucas arrived with a sketch pad, his hands nervous. "Mom," he said, setting it on the table, "I drew something. For you." Clara opened it, her breath catching. It was a sketch of the cottage, its porch detailed with every weathered board. A swing added where lavender bloomed, a figure that looked like her, painting by the sea. "It's how I see you," Lucas said, his voice soft, strong, at home, doing what you love. Clara's eyes welled, her fingers tracing the lines. "Lucas," she said, "this is everything." They hugged, the kind of hug that mended years of distance, and Clara felt Henry's presence, his voice whispering. "You did it, Clara." Their talks grew deeper, peeling back layers of pain. Lucas shared his struggle, his love for Izzy clouded by her lies, his guilt for not seeing sooner. "I wanted to believe she was good," he said, his eyes on the waves. "But she hurt you, Mom. And I let it happen." Clara took his hand, her touch steady. "You didn't let it happen," she said. "You were caught. Like I was, in wanting to keep the peace, but peace isn't peace if it costs your truth." Lucas nodded, his face heavy, but lighter than before. He'd started therapy, a step Clara hadn't expected, and was untangling his life from Izzy's, one hard choice at a time. Izzy's story ended differently. A cautionary note in Clara's journey. The Willow Creek Times article and Crestwood Financial Group's review had consequences. Izzy was suspended, her reputation tarnished by whispers of unethical conduct. She sent Clara an email in early December. Her words carefully crafted. "Clara, I'm sorry for any misunderstanding. I only wanted what was best for our family. I hope we can move forward." Clara read it, her heart calm, and saw the truth. Izzy's apology was hollow, a last attempt to save face. She didn't reply, but she didn't hate Izzy either. She's lost something too, Clara thought. Her own way, her own truth. The restraining order, finalized after Izzy's lock testing incident, kept her away from the cottage, a boundary Clara held without regret. Clara's support group at the community center became a beacon, a circle of women who'd walked paths like hers. One evening, as snowflakes dusted Willow Creek, a rare California treat, they shared resolutions for the new year. Clara spoke, her voice clear. "I want to keep painting, to keep loving, but never at the cost of myself." Ellen, her knitting needles paused, smiled. "You've shown us how." "Clara," she said, "and that's a gift." The women raised their mugs, chamomile tea steaming, and Clara felt seen, not as a mother or widow, but as a woman, whole and strong. Willow Creek's rhythms wove through Clara's new life. The farmer's market, now a place to sell her lavender sachets. The coffee shop, a spot to sketch with Lucas. The library's book club, a haven for stories and laughter. She joined a local choir, her voice, once reserved for lullabies, now rising in harmony at Sunday services. Each step was a reclaiming, a brushstroke on the canvas of her life. She thought of a Christmas in 2000, when Lucas, at 24, had strung lights on their tiny tree, saying, "Mom, you're the best thing in my life." That love was still there, but now it stood on equal ground, built on respect, not sacrifice. Lucas's path wasn't easy, but it was his own. He and Izzy separated formally in January 2026, their marriage a casualty of truth. Lucas didn't blame Clara, but he carried his own grief, a quiet weight Clara couldn't lift for him. "I'm learning, Mom," he said one evening, over blackberry cobbler in the cottage kitchen, "to live for me, not for someone else's plans." Clara nodded, her heart proud. "That's all I ever wanted," she said, "for you to live true." Clara's own truth bloomed in small, beautiful ways. She hung more paintings, seascapes that caught the ocean's soul, and sold a few at the farmer's market, her hands trembling as strangers praised her work. She started a journal, its pages filled with memories of Henry, hopes for Lucas, and promises to herself. "I am enough," she wrote one night, the words bold under the glow of a lamp. "And I will never let anyone take that away." She read it aloud, her voice steady, and felt a peace settle like waves smoothing the shore. One February morning, as the first buds of spring peeked through the lavender, Clara stood on the porch, a mug of coffee warming her hands. The ocean stretched before her, its horizon endless, its waves a song of resilience. She thought of the summer, the pills in the trash, the fight for her home. She'd been afraid then, afraid of losing Lucas, of being alone. But alone, she'd learned, wasn't empty. It was space to grow, to love, to be. She pictured Henry, his smile bright as the sun, and knew he'd be proud. Clara's story wasn't just hers, it was a light for others. At the community centre, women shared how her courage had inspired them to set boundaries, to reclaim dreams, to stand tall. "You showed us," Ellen said, her knitting needles still, "that it's never too late to choose yourself." Clara smiled, her heart full, and knew she'd found something greater than a house. She'd found herself. As the sun rose over Crescent Bay, painting the sky in hues of hope, Clara whispered a promise to Henry, to Lucas, to the woman she'd become. "I'll keep living, loving, standing true." And to anyone listening, she'd say, with a voice soft but sure, "No matter your age, no matter your scars, you are worthy of love, of respect, of the life you build. Don't let anyone take that away, not even those you hold closest. Stand firm, like the waves that never stop, and let your heart shine." If this story's warmed your heart, if you found inspiration in Clara's journey, please hit that subscribe button to join our circle of storytellers, and drop a comment below. What lessons have you learned about loving yourself? I'd be honored to hear your stories. Share them with me, won't you?